Welcome. I'm Luca, and I will be the host of this event. So you can see the rules here in the chat. The rules are very simple. So mute your microphone if you're not speaking. Show your face in the camera if possible. But we are going to record this event to share it on the web. So if you're not comfortable with this for any reason, please turn off your webcam so that we can still record the event. And then we'll start asking some questions to our host. And if you want to add some more questions, please write Scrum in the chat so that your name will be called by myself, and then you will be able to ask your question. So I think that we can start by introducing our host for tonight. And she is Natalia Saranti. She is a Scrum Master and Agile Coach at TomTom in Amsterdam. She coaches and supports Scrum teams and individuals in their path of high performance, learning how to manage conflicts, how to communicate effectively, and enjoy delivering frequently. She's also delivering trainings on soft skills as a support to individual development of employees, which is her main passion. And I will also add that she was also the international chairwoman of ISTEC, an association I was part of. So I'm very proud to have her tonight here as a host. So thank you, Natalia, for joining us tonight.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me for tonight.
Okay, I'll start with the first question. So we'll start with two questions that we have written for Natalia, and then after these two questions, I'll open questions for everyone else. So the first question for you is, we have two very generic questions just to let us tell you about yourself and your work. So the first is going to be, what is the meaning of Agile Coach or Scrum Master, and what is the difference between the two of you, of the two things?
Okay, so starting from there, I would say, so as an Agile Coach or Scrum Master, you work inside an organization which works in the Agile principles and values. The difference of the two, to be specific, is that a Scrum Master is a coach of a team. So you coach the team into the Agile principles and how to be Agile as a team. Where an Agile Coach, you do coach the organization as a whole, how to be Agile. But also you coach, most of Agile coaches also coach individual Scrum Masters. So it depends a little bit from which school you come from, but there is one interpretation, which is if you're an Agile coach, you coach the Scrum Masters and the Scrum Masters coach the team. And there is also the other perception of a Scrum Master is also an Agile coach because it coaches the team how to be Agile, which is what we are doing. So it's a little bit confusing, but that's why sometimes you use both and you just explain what you do in your everyday life, and it's easier for people to understand and categorize you, let's say, for how they have it in their mind.
Great, thank you. So the second question is also like a bit more about yourself, to tell us about your history. So what was your university career, and what was your path from the university to TomTom, and specifically to your current role at TomTom?
Yeah, so I started as a software engineer, so electrical and computer engineering, let's say. I studied in Greece, in Patras, for the studies were 5 years, but of course it never finishes at 5 years, so it took a bit longer. So during my studies at the second year of university, I was starting to feel that I really want to be involved in more things inside the university, how we can improve and bring closer students with what is happening outside of just Greece, but also Europe. And then I stumbled across ISTEC. So ISTEC stands for Electrical Engineering Students, European Student Association, which is a very big organization across Europe and has a lot of local committees, which one of them is also in Trieste. So when I joined the organization in 2013, I started as a very junior member, being the contact person, doing really small things here and there, and mostly traveling to actually see what is happening around Europe with the organization and how can we bring this in Patras. So after that, a year after that, I became the chairperson of Patras, and I was leading the local community into creating actually some events where we can bring foreigners, but we can also bring knowledge to the students in our branch, so in our committee. And so it went really nicely. We finished the mandate, and then there was this surge of like, okay, so what I would like to do now as the next step is to transfer the knowledge that I have to the new people so that they can continue actually doing the things that I have been doing for the last 1 year. So I decided to apply as a trainer so ISTEC has a training team. So it's the people that try to train the members of the organization into their soft skills so that they can organize more things, collaborate more effectively, communicate effectively, and all these kinds of stuff. So I applied as a trainer. I became a trainer and started delivering trainings around Europe. And then, in the process of becoming better into that, but also learning a lot myself, I also decided to challenge myself a bit more and apply for the board of ISTEC, so in the international board. Plus also bring some change into the organization, since there were huge steps going to be taken during the year that was my mandate, such as creating a strategic plan for the organization, restructuring teams, and so on. So after that, I finished the mandate, and then I started immediately searching for a job, since I was almost finishing with my thesis, and I really wanted to go out and experience the corporate environment, let's say, or how it is to work actually. I applied into different positions, and one that I really liked was at TomTom, which was an internship as a project coordinator. So that's the role that they give, let's say. And I got the job back in 2018. I started the internship, and as soon as I finished the internship, they offered me a permanent position as a Scrum Master. So again, the role is more of a project coordinator, but what you actually do is a Scrum Master. So then I started as a Scrum Master and being more involved in also bringing the Agile values into the whole organization. So that's why I also an Agile Coach. And that's what I'm also currently working as.
And where did you learn all the things that you needed to become a Scrum Master?
So
University or just on the work at TomTom, something with ISTEC?
No, so the thing is that with ISTEC, I wouldn't say that we are very agile in ISTEC. I would say we are a bit more traditional in the way we work. But on the other hand, you do train a lot of your skills that you will need as a Scrum Master, but also as a software engineer inside the team. Like, you need to be able to communicate with people, to collaborate, to take decisions, to go forward through challenges. And collaborate in when conflicts are happening, learn how to resolve them, and so on. So ISTEC gives you a lot of those skills that you need to be part of a Scrum team, either as a Scrum Master or a software engineer or a product owner. But for me, what helped me to learn more was that I started my internship at TomTom, and I was already starting to read a lot on the web, but also from books, on what is Scrum, what are the values in Scrum, and so on. And then as soon as I got hired, I applied for getting a certificate as a Scrum Master. So then you go through the certification, you learn also a lot of things through that process, and then you start practicing and you learn through your practice, I would say. I don't think that there is any point that you stop learning, you know it all.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. If anyone wants to ask any question, they can write Scrum here in the chat. So questions are now open. I don't know if Alessandra maybe wants to ask something. I know that she has many questions here. Yeah, I see Scrum from Alessandra, so you can go.
Hi all. Okay, so Natalia, can you describe us your typical day as a Scrum Master?
Yeah, so I would say maybe it's good before we dive into what we do every day to explain a little bit on what is Agile for people that maybe never came across Agile, and how did it came to be, and then what is also Scrum, because Scrum is also one practice of Agile. So I prepared a very short presentation, not something super wow, but let me see, probably you can see my screen, right?
Now it's working. Great.
Okay, so then, so how Agile was found was that it was a couple of software engineers back in 2011 that they were kind of, let's say, trying to find a way that teams could work effectively together. And based on their experience so far, they decided to come together into a ski center, and that's why the ski center. So they decided to come together into a ski center in September and talk and discuss what was their experience throughout the time and what made teams to be great teams and software to be actually working and being released frequently and teams to be happy with the work that they were doing. So they decided to put down what they figured out, and they created some sort of manifesto that you can find also on the web very easily. If you write Agile manifesto, it has the 4 core values or principles of Agile, and then the 12 principles that if you really embed them into your culture as a company and as a team, then you can really say that we are an Agile company or a team. So yeah, they brought together all their experience, as I said, and they came up with this. So what Agile tries to do is that they value more the things that are on the left than the things that are on the right, without meaning that we don't do the things on the right, but is that we value more the things on the left. So the first one is that we value more the individuals and the interactions over the processes and the tools. So we value more how people collaborate and communicate together than establishing really perfect ways of communication or using the tools to support our communication. We better value how people want to communicate and then find the tools that fits their way, let's say. And then the second thing is about customer collaboration and contract negotiation. And what does mean is that what happened in, let's say, old school companies is that you have your customer, you sign your contract, you say, okay, we're going to work on this project for the next 2 years. You go off to your working place, you work really hard for 2 years, and then you show it to the customer. Suddenly the customer is super surprised because this is not what they were expecting. So what we try to do as Agile is that we really want to have a really good communication with our customer and be really close to them. So collaborate with them every 2 weeks, every week, as often as possible, so that then the moment that we have something ready in our application or in the project that we're working, we can show them to them and ask them, is it good, or is there something more that we can do? Should we change something? Instead of creating a bunch of stuff that might be unnecessary. Then the third thing is having working software over comprehensive documentation. Of course, documentation is important, but again, what was happening before in companies is that we document everything, we decide how we are going to do it, we create a very detailed plan, and we explain how the software is going to actually work, and then we start working on making it work, and then then we see that it's not actually working, so then we have to improve the documentation, and we go back and forth in this way, where in Agile we prefer to have a working software, so that something that works very well, and then document it, and make the documentation concrete and easy to understood by the people that need to read it. And then the last one is responding to change over following a plan. So again, like what was happening before is that we create a plan and we follow it blindly. But in the world that we are living right now, there are so many changes that are happening all the time that one of the core values of Agile is to be agile and be able to be flexible and adapt to the situations that are happening. So let's say that you are doing something, your customer decides that they want to do something else, or there is this new trend happening, or For example, TomTom has as, let's say, the biggest competitor being Google, and let's say that Google decided to do this really nice feature and we want to adapt it, then we need to be very flexible and change our plan in order to go towards there. So how it is that you have Agile as this mindset, because it's more of a mindset than it's some sort of guidelines that they gave on how to be Agile. And under that, you have ways that you can do it. So there is Scrum, there is Kanban, there is Lean, there is extreme programming, there is SAFe, and so on. So you can decide what you want to apply based on what fits your organization or your team. But for example, for us, mostly people use Scrum. And so how Scrum works, very briefly, and this will shine a light on what you asked, Alessandra, on what I do every day. So how Scrum works is that we work in iterations of 2 weeks. And at the end of those 2 weeks, we want to have something that is a working software that we can show it to our customer and we can get some feedback from. So at the beginning of the 2 weeks, on Monday, we'll do a planning. So the product owner defines what are the priorities that we have as a team in terms of the product. So he or she defines the what. So what is the team going to do? And then the team decides how much we can bring in, how much can we do in these 2 weeks, how are we going to collaborate in those 2 weeks in order to get those things done, and they set a goal. And after that, the sprint starts. So the sprint starts, and every day around 10, let's say, we have the stand-up, and in that stand-up, the team makes a plan over the next 24 hours. How are we going to collaborate and work together to get things done until tomorrow? So they make a plan together for the next 24 hours, and then they meet again the next day in the same time at 10 o'clock, and they discuss, okay, what did you do yesterday? What did I do yesterday? What am I going to do today until tomorrow? And so on. And then at the end of the sprint, we have the sprint review, and there is where all the customers and stakeholders come together, and they will give feedback on what you've created. So if you did nothing, that wouldn't be really good. If you did something, then you will show it to them and you will try to get some feedback over, is this the right way? Are we going to the right path? Should we change this? And so on. And then at the end of the sprint and after the sprint review, we have the sprint retrospective. So the sprint retrospective, for me, at least as a Scrum Master, is one of the most important meetings where you try to bring to the team what has been happening during the last 2 weeks and inspect the past and adjust for the future. So you want to see what has been going in the past, what didn't work, what worked, what went well, what didn't went well in the last 2 weeks, and how can we improve in the next 2 weeks. So then you have a continuous improvement also inside the team, and the team becomes better and better. And a nice metaphor that we use on how we work as a Scrum team is that you work as a basketball team or a sports team, that you define your plan, you set your goals, which in our word is a to-do list, and then you start moving through the 2 weeks. You start the game, you come together with your coach, you discuss in the morning at 10 o'clock, what are we going to do? What is the plan for the next one day? And then you go back to the game, you come together, you discuss again, and you do this every day for 2 weeks. And then at the end, either you celebrate or you cry and you learn as a team. So, that's how Scrum works. And what I do every day, let's see. So I'm responsible for facilitating all those meetings and be the coach of the team. So ensure that they're progressing, they do collaborate, and so on. And then there are a lot of meetings either inside the team or outside the team when it comes to the work that will come to the team, how the team collaborates, how do we as a single team collaborate with the rest of the organization. So it's mostly meetings that you have. And the most important thing as a coach is to just sit and observe. So what you want to do is that you are in all the meetings and you just observe how do they interact together, how do they talk to each other, how do they interact with their stakeholders, how do they interact with their product owner, what is going inside the team, what is slowing us down, what is stopping us, what is actually making us good, what are our strengths, and so on. And then you bring that to the team at the end of the 2 weeks in the retrospective, and you try to discuss it together. Or you can bring it also throughout the week if you see that this really needs to be fixed. But then you just coach the team to find their own solutions on how they want to fix their problems.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. If anyone else wants to ask questions, just write Scrum. In the meantime, I'll ask a question to Natalia. So I guess that, of course, if you are always trying to make a team work better, you're also going to find issues because, of course, you cannot get better if you do not find any issues. Do you also find issues between teams, people inside the team, and how do you manage to improve those more personal aspects of a team? So if two players do not get along together, how do you work on that?
Yeah, so there are many times that you face this situation because everyone, there is this notion also of my code is better than yours, or we should do it this way over that way, and this kind of stuff. But what I would say is that the first thing is that you try to let them talk about it themselves and see how do they approach it, how is it going. And maybe you have a joint conversation where you try to put the process of how do we decide as a team. So usually conflicts, and a lot of the conflicts come over the decision. So they decide something and they disagree on the decision that they make. But the problem is that there was never established a process on how do we decide as a team. And there are many processes on how you can do it to have a very good and effective way of decision making. So then you can bring that to the team and say, why don't we follow this model and see where it will take us? But there are some times that things go really personal between team members. So what I personally do is that I try to have a one-to-one with each one of them. And again, coaching them. So as a coach, you believe in their abilities to solve these kind of situations. You don't want to tell them what to do. You just want to hear them and ask them the right questions that will help them find their solution on how can I approach this in a way that is comfortable for them to approach it. And if you see that it's really not going further, then the job goes to the line manager. So you have your line manager, which is, let's say, the person responsible for you. And if that team member is really destructive for the team, or this conflict is really destructive for the whole team, then you try to take it up to a level that it has some authority, because I don't have authority over them. And as a coach, I just try to hear them and find their solutions. But that's all I can do. Yeah. So trying to teach a little bit, coach a little bit, and then, if it doesn't go anywhere, then you try to get it higher.
Okay, thank you. I see a Scrum from Mariela, so you can go.
Yeah, so the thing is that when it comes to the product, so the let's say we call it product because we are developing something and it's really going long and it doesn't have a very specific deadline. Maybe we have some deliveries we want to make, but the goal is that you deliver every sprint a little bit. So that one is defined by the product owner. So the product owner is also part of the team. And if the product owner is not happy, it can also bring it to the team. And if the stakeholders are not happy with the performance of the team, they will bring it up to the review and they will say that we are not happy. And my role is to bring that to the retrospective and say, so the stakeholders are not happy. What's happening? What are we doing that is wrong? What can we improve in order to satisfy our stakeholders? Is there something? And maybe it's also a matter of expectations that we didn't set correct expectations. But if that's it, then we will communicate it. Then the line manager, at least in our company, has a very different role. So the line manager is more of like a people management. So it has nothing to do with the team and it's outside of the team. And the goal of the line manager is to improve each individual. So I have also my line manager. And with my line manager, we set some targets for myself so that we can assess whether I'm improving or not as an individual inside the company. We set my path of like, where do I want to go in a year from now inside the company? What are the opportunities for me? Is the one who approves my holidays and all this kind of stuff. So it has nothing to do with the team. And it also has, because I am the one collaborating with that line manager to ensure that the goals that you're putting on those people are not going to be individualistic. They need to be team goals. They need to be something that go towards the team. Because if you ask an engineer that I want you to deliver your own thing by that day, then that person might be driven from that, might avoid collaboration, might avoid talking with other people, might avoid coming into meetings because there is a lot of stress on doing that. So you want the line manager also to give targets to those people that have to do with the whole team. So a good target would be that if your team as a whole team is delivering frequently, then you are performing well because you helped your team in performing well. So that's the collaboration that you have with the line manager. Did that answer the question? Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes. So as a team, well, mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So you don't have a target of you as an individual. You need to deliver that by then. It's more of like as a whole team or as an organization, we have this deadline. And then we all together need to do something to meet that. And then you try to put targets that are gonna, the outcome of them will be to have that. So maybe you want to just a target that you improve your collaboration with your team members. And that will eventually bring us to deliver that product by the deadline, instead of telling them what to do by when. Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Thank you. So we have a question from Davide, who says that he cannot speak right now, so I'll ask it for him. He wrote it here in the chat. So what do you say to a manager if it comes to you to tell your team to develop something for today, even if it takes a week to do it? I think that's quite a common situation in business.
Yeah, so it doesn't work like that in Agile. So what you do as an Agile team is that you have your story, so the things that you need to do as a team. And let's say, for example, that you're going to start a new application and you want to create the app, and it will say welcome, let's say. And that needs a lot of work to be done. So what the team does is that they define together, okay, what do we need to do exactly with the product owner? Then the team decides how are we going to do it, and then they estimate, which is a different story how we estimate. But let's say they estimate and they say more or less, okay, it will take us that amount of time. There is no one that can challenge that. There is no one that can say, I don't think it should take that time, or you should do it faster. This is what the team said. This is what they think it will take. And you trust your engineers that they are not going to say it's going to take 10 days so that they can do other stuff in the meanwhile. And that's also a bit impossible, because every day in the morning we come together and you ask them, okay, what have you been doing yesterday? What are you going to do tomorrow? And if they've been saying the same thing over 5 days, then me as a Scrum Master, I'm going to bring it to the team and I'm going to ask what happened, how can we improve on that? And how can we move forward? So, then if I see that this is repeating over the time for one person, for example, then I might need to bring it to the line manager. But you never push people to do more that they believe that they can do. It's not a requirement.
Okay, thank you. Next question, we have Borut.
Hi. I would like to know which are the most challenging issues you encounter as a Scrum Master? Thank you.
Yeah, so I would say one of them is indeed conflicts inside the teams. So people fighting over messages. So that's something I think that I heard a lot of Scrum Masters also mentioning, and I see it also myself, that it's also something that you sometimes cannot see. So what happens is that people develop their software in their code place and so on, and then other people need to review it and give comments. And there, a lot of times, there is a long discussion and a long of conflict happening over messages that I also am not aware. Sometimes they don't want to talk about it. And then we discover it after some time, which causes so much frustration. And it might already go too deep into a personal level that it's really hard to reverse it. So that's one of the challenges. Then another challenge is indeed when you have a product owner which is pushing a lot of the team, a lot of things on the team, and it's also very negative on how the team is working, let's say. That can bring a lot of negativity inside the team and demotivate them from high performing, let's say. And that's something that you as a Scrum Master need to solve, and you need to take it one-to-one with the product owner, which is not very easy. I would say, those are the two things that are really important, at least for the team culture and how the team works. But then there are many other things that can be challenging as a Scrum Master. So there might be changes in the structure of the teams over the time. So someone high on top decides that this person will change team and that person will come in your team, and making drastic changes inside the team or the focus of the team. And that creates a lot of emotions for the engineers and a lot of, things to adjust to. And you as a Scrum Master are there to support them, but the change is also happening for you because suddenly you got a new member, suddenly a member is leaving, the focus of the team changed. So there is a lot of you to handle, but there is also a lot to handle for the team and help the team. So you need to go through it really fast yourself so that then you can actually coach the team and help them to go through it as well. So that's also very difficult to handle as a Scrum Master.
Thank you.
You're
Other
welcome.
questions? Salvatore.
Ciao. Hi. I have a quick question. Can you please elaborate more on the role of the product owner? So, what are the difference of the so-called product manager? Because if I remember correctly, it is not exactly a product manager. So, what are the difference with product manager? What is more, and what is, let's say, the responsibility towards the customers and towards the team?
Yeah, so it really depends on how is your organization structured, let's say, and how they work. There is a product manager, because some of the companies, they like to work without product management teams, and they only have the product owners. But if you're a huge organization, so in our case, we have around 50 Scrum teams, and each one of them, or every 2 or 3 of them, they have one product owner. So that means we have around 10, 15 product owners. So the product owners really look downwards towards the team, and in the really short term. So what are we going to do in the next 1 month, 3 months, maybe sometimes up to 6 months, but that's how far they can see. And then the product managers are the ones that are searching for the new deals, are the ones that are searching for what is the innovation that we are going to do in the future, in the long-term roadmap. Though the product owner looks at the short term, and it's there to actually help the team and bring focus to the team on what is it that we are doing now. And a little bit of a future of like, this is where we are going in the future, but not so far as in a year or 2 from now, because anyway, things change, as we said. So, it's hard to predict the future. Yeah, so that I would say is the difference, that the product owner is really close to the team and looking at this point of time, maybe a little bit further. And then the product manager is the one looking really far ahead and bringing the changes downwards to the teams.
If I can, thank you. For example, just for an example, you were saying before the conversation about code changes like pull requests, merge requests, you name it. So is the product owner entitled to see the code written by the team members or not? So can he comment on?
No. So the product owner will only get to see the what is running, and if it's running and it's working as he or she thought it will be working, then it's done, and we move it to done, and it closes as a task. He or she will not get to see how did you write the code or what did you do, but your team members will look at the codes. And if the team thinks that this is not a good code, or this should be written in this way or whatever, then they're gonna give feedback, and then you will be a bit stuck on the reviewing. So moving that forward. But at some point, you need to come to a conclusion and move it forward so that you get to close the story.
Okay, I don't know if I can make another question. So concerning the review of the code, so you said the product owner can see only team members. So inside how is organized. So for example, there is suppose that today there is a new feature that is ready, is set to done, or they say implementation done by one team member. So it creates the merge request, pull request, whatever. So who is allowed to review? Is there, for example, a review, or all the other team members can review, or there is, for example, a pair? So I write this code and then you review it, or
Yeah, okay. So the thing is that, again, it depends on how your team works and how they agree to do that. Or maybe you have organizational guidelines. So what happens sometimes is that, so over the time it changes, but how sometimes it works is that you have owners of this code base. So people that really know well the code that has been written from previous people. And then they are mandatory reviewers, so they need to approve your code. And then every time you try to change people so that there is a variety of opinions over your code, but also other people get to learn through reviewing your code. How do you write? How they can also improve? How they can learn, because maybe they never worked on that exact component that you're working, and so on. So you try to have a variety of people, but there are sometimes 1 or 2 people who own that code base. They know it really well, and they need to approve it for it to be merged.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Cool, you're welcome.
Okay, so I see that we have another question from Davide. So I'll read this as well. So if deadlines are set, can the customer change at will by anticipating them?
So does the question mean that? So is the question?
So if you can move the deadlines in advance, so that like on request from the customer after the deadlines have been set.
Well, you do have some sort of agreement with the customer, so you do set some deadlines. So that is a very extreme situation to be taken, and then we need to consider what are we taking out of the scope if you need it to be ready. So you need to tell us what is something that is really not important and you really don't care about, so that we can take that out of scope and we can focus on that. And then you collaborate with the customer to agree on that. But that happens also in a bit of a higher level. It doesn't happen with the engineers usually. It happens usually from product owner or product manager to have this kind of conversations because it's a bit of a sensitive conversation and you want someone who knows how to handle negotiation well. Yeah.
Thank you. I will ask a question while others can write Scrum here in the chat. So you talked about teams a lot, but what's the size of the teams that you are managing as a coach?
So how we say it is that you need to be able to feed them with one pizza. So you try to have around 6 to 7 people is the perfect size of a Scrum team. Not too few, but not too many, so that they can collaborate together. They can review each other's work and so on. And it's not that little that they cannot collaborate because there are many things to do. But there are not also that many that they cannot talk with everyone or collaborate with everyone over the course of 1 or 2 sprints. And
what about if you have a smaller company and you have multiple products? Like in my case, we are 5 programmers and we have 3 products. So how do you think, like we have teams that are, well, there is one team which is like 90% me and 10% someone else. That's an extreme case, but of course you have many small companies. So how would you make that case work? I know it's a bit extreme, but it's not so uncommon.
Yeah, well, the thing is that you can apply Scrum to everything. I apply Scrum in my everyday life. So what you try to do is that you at the beginning of the week, you write down all the things that you want to do over the next days. And then you try to move them from one place to the other, depending on how many stages you have. So maybe you have in progress, you have under review, under acceptance or whatever, and then it's done. So what you try to do is to detail out what is it exactly that you have to do, so that you know when it is done actually, and you can close it, because if it's very abstract, maybe it will never get done. And then over the days, you just move the things into in progress, done, and so on. And at the end of the week, if you want to run 1 week sprint, or if it depends on how much work you have, but either in a week or 2 weeks, you sit together with yourself, if you are one person team, or with the rest of your team, and you look at, okay, what did we manage to get done over the last 2 weeks? Should we shift our focus? Is everything going correct? Are we collaborating well together? Is there something that could help us actually improve and become better? And so on. Then, you run in the increments. So I would say it's good to have separate roles of who defines the priorities, who is the one facilitating those kind of meetings, because you need to be objective. Not objective, but you need to be distant from what is happening actually in the meeting and what is being said. And then, a separate team of people that are developing the product.
So basically like the Kanban board method, just like putting things in there and starting moving also like from in the whole development process, maybe.
Yeah, well, the thing is that with a Kanban, if you have a project, maybe for your project you want to have a Kanban board, but I would say for the weekly things, you want to have a Scrum board, because the difference with the Kanban is that you don't have ceremonies. So you don't retrospect, you don't look back, you don't adjust. So you keep on going, but you do have some ways that will bring you agility, such as limiting your work in progress. You have different limits on the different columns that you have and so on that will help you bring focus, collaboration inside the team, and so on.
Okay, thank you. Alessandra.
Let's talk a bit about tools. I mean, what are the tools that you as a Scrum Master are using for structuring and following up projects?
So as a company, we use Jira or Jira, depending on how people pronounce it. So it's a really nice tool, which works as a Scrum team. It has everything that you need. So the boards, the user stories, the epics. So really how it is defined to work as a Scrum team. And then we use Confluence for any documentation or meeting notes, anything like that. So in that, everyone from the company has access, both Jira and Confluence. And then we also use Slack as a means of communication inside the team. So each team has their own Slack channel. We do have bigger Slack channel for the bigger team or the whole organization, or for this topic, that topic, and so on. So those are the three main tools that we use every day as a Scrum team.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So other questions? We have Borut.
Yes. Have you ever faced a situation where you had to convert a team who was used to program in the traditional way, like the waterfall method, or you had to face the situation where you had to deal with someone who specifically wasn't used to the agile methods, and you had to put him in the state of mind of the agile working?
So I didn't have so far, because when I entered TomTom, it was also the first company I entered, and they were fully agile from the beginning. So you would find all the teams working as Scrum teams. But then, yes, you might get new joiners that they have been working in different companies that work differently before, but you try to onboard them in, this is how we work. So try to look at it and bring feedback on what is not working for you, because you don't want to tell them just look at it and follow it and that's it, but bring feedback if this is not working for you and so on. But it happens sometimes that you also get people, so that happened to me as well, that you get people that worked in Scrum. So they thought they'd been working in Scrum, or this is what they told them, which wasn't actually Scrum, and they hate it. And they come to the team with the perception of like, this is never going to work. This is really not the way it should work. So you try to have a one-to-one with that person, try to understand that, okay, this is also what the company follows. So let's see how we can make it work also for you. And put trust in Scrum that it will prove you otherwise, that it will actually work, because it was founded also by engineers. It wasn't a manager who decided, okay, how can I make teams work perfectly for me? But it came from software engineers. So then what I try to do is to have one-on-one with that person, talking a little bit more about Scrum and what are the benefits of it, and what was the experience before that brought him to the point to say that this is not going to work. And try to listen to the concerns and so on, and see how that will progress over time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But yeah, I would say like if you have a pretty new team that never worked in Scrum or Agile and they've been working in a waterfall way, what you try to do is to inject slowly some of the Scrum ceremonies and try to take them at least to a training where they can understand a little bit of what Scrum is all about with some really simple examples. And then you, over the retrospectives, you try sometimes to also teach a lot of things that Scrum can bring to the team, or if we would do this, maybe it would be better, and so on. Yeah, but they will also figure it out themselves, how they can do it better.
Okay, thank you. I will ask another question. So I will ask you, do you think that following the Scrum and Agile methodology is something that can also work for a company that works on projects like a consultancy company, or is it more suited for companies that work more on a specific product rather than just a consultancy, like specific works that like start there and then there?
Well, I think it really depends. I think Scrum can work for anything with some limitations. Maybe you don't have a product owner that will approve your story and will say that your code is working, or you have a real outcome to show over your tasks. Though if you really try to follow Scrum and you want to have outcomes and things that are visible, then I'm sure that your work will become better also as a consultancy. So if you do have a consultancy and you try in everything that you do to see, okay, what is the thing that will show me that this is actually done or this is working? And you define everything in that way and you start doing stuff. You collaborate with your team every day, and then you look back and you improve yourself. So you have this continuous feedback, continuous improvement. You talk with your customers. We try to see. So if you embed those values that we talked in the beginning, you become more agile. Maybe it's not exactly Scrum, but I think Agile can work. Yes.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, Alessandra.
And about the projects, do you work on different projects at the same time, or only one single project at a time?
Well, it depends how you see a project. So TomTom, what it does is that they create a navigation app, right? So a big navigation product. That's the single product, let's say. Okay, there might be different platforms that it's working, or we have the one which is on board and it's for the cars, and we have the application and so on. But more or less everything will end up to the same place and will be taken from the same place. So it's not really that you work over a lot of things, but maybe you work on different functionalities. So maybe your team is working on, I don't know, projecting the routes, but at the same time ensuring that your GPS location is in the same place, or that you visualize really well where is the end of the routes, or things like that. So you might work on different functionalities on the product, but that can happen, yes, that you work on different things.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. We have another question from Salvatore.
Thanks for your patience. I have about metrics. So, how is there a way to assess the progress of a team in terms of metrics? So, let me explain. So, metrics both during the sprint and at the end of the sprint. So, let's say along measuring what's going on during the sprint, and then in the retrospect, if you can sum up something or aggregate or this in both ways.
Well, one thing that can help you, if it is in this kind of window, like inside the sprint. So one thing is about how the flow of user stories is. So, for example, at the end in Jira, you get a diagram which shows you how things worked out. So sometimes you see these really flat things. So the team didn't manage to close any user story. So it's like a dead person. And then sometimes you see this, like it goes until the end, and then the really last day of the sprint, they closed everything, or they closed half of the things. So this gives you a lot of insights on what is happening. So like we are working for 2 weeks, and we really stress ourselves up to finish everything at the last minute, or we are not collaborating. So there might be different things that are happening, but it's a very valuable metric to look at. So that's one thing. And then over the time, it's good to look at the lead time. So how much time it takes for a user story from the day it is in to do to the day that it gets done. And that will show you also, do we bring user stories that are so small that we can finish them up in 2 sprints and show something to our customer? Or are we creating user stories that take a month to be finished, and our customer never sees something until the end of the month? So that's also a good metric to look at. And then the rest are a bit of, the sprint goal, did we achieve it or not? That's pretty binary. So that's, I would say, in the short run, so in the window of a sprint, this is what you look mostly as a metric.
Okay, so basically the flow of the completion of the tasks that are bound to the user stories. So you see task 1, task 2 for user story A. How long did it take to complete, and in how well team collaborating to, say, making the tasks, moving tasks from to do to completed, done, or whatever, or tested and accepted. That's what it is.
Yeah, well, you don't really look in so many details, because you also don't want to micromanage the team on how are they doing it. But what you want to see is, for example, the team has brought in the sprint 3 user stories, and each one of them is 3 story points. So that's a number that they estimate. That is it's gonna be 3 story points. So they bring that into the sprint, and what you see is that all of them got to be closed at the end. So you see from 9, your diagram suddenly went to 0. But what is healthy to see is that the team worked together on the first one. And then after 3 days, you see a downwards on your flow. And then after that, you see another downwards. And then you see another one, which meant that they first took the first story, they worked on it together, they finished it. Then they brought the other story, they worked on it, they finished it, and then they brought the next one, they worked on it, and they finished it. Instead of we work on 3 at the same time, and then we closed it at the end, or maybe we don't close it because we didn't collaborate. And it took a lot of time to be done by one person. So that's all you see.
I see. So because you don't have, let's say, this, you can't see what are the tasks are in below the user story. So what you see is just the level of completion of a single user story, not what happens inside the tasks that the developer assigned to them, or not?
Well, you can see that on the board, but I wouldn't focus on that. The point is finishing the story. So if we didn't get it done, we didn't get it done, and then we need to discuss what happened there. If the person who was handling that story or the team wants to discuss about the individual subtasks, then we can discuss. But I don't go into the subtasks and discuss how did the subtask move inside, because the goal is to finish the story. That's it. If we didn't get it done, we didn't get it done, and we failed to deliver.
I see. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Okay, does anyone else have any other question? If not, I think that we can thank Natalia for telling us so many things about her work, her job, and many useful things that I think we can start to think about more, at least in our daily jobs as programmers, at least for myself, but I think for many others in here. So I think it was very useful for us to be more immersed in this different mentality, let's say, that I think that especially in the university, this is not something that is really taught to students as much as it would be needed to. So I think it's very useful to do some nights like this, having someone who is from the field telling us these things, how they work. And
yeah, exactly. I think that like one thing that you don't get really from the university is the skills on how to collaborate with other people, how to communicate with other people, how to give proper feedback in a constructive way, how to decide together, like things like that. And then you come to work and you think that you will be your computer doing everything alone, nobody telling you giving feedback on your code or how you did it or the way you decided to take actions and so on. And then it strikes you and it creates a lot of stress and a lot of frustration to have this kind of things and not knowing how can I handle it because you never learn. So yeah, those are skills that we really lack coming out of the university. But and unfortunately, you see that a lot in company requirements because we also interview people and we try to look at their soft skills. Like, okay, you're a good programmer and there are many good outside. But what we want to see is who's the person who can actually collaborate inside the team and can bring value to the team, not in terms of technical skills, but also, let's say, leading the team or being really proactive in doing things, resolving blockers of the team and things like that. Not the person who can code the best.
Mm-hmm. So you're looking like more for team players than for like crazy geniuses.
Yeah, exactly. Because also like one of the things is like if you have a genius person inside the team, you want to take it out of the team because then the rest of the team will just say, okay, he can do it and he will do it. And the day that he will be sick or he decides to leave the company, then we lost. And then we are going to suffer from that loss. So you really don't want to bring someone that's who has this knowledge and wants to keep it for him or herself. You want to bring someone that maybe has this knowledge, but is really eager to bring that knowledge to the team, to the company, and improve us as a whole instead of playing alone.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you again. And
thank you very much for hosting me.
Yeah. All right, then. I'll
Have
talk to you.
Evening. Yes.
You too. Thank you, Natalia.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
thank you, everyone, for participating.
Bye.
Yeah, thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.